7 Johnny Carson guests who were secretly battling addiction. For more than 30 years, Johnny Carson welcomed America's biggest stars into living rooms across the country. With his warm smile and effortless charm, it felt less like a television show and more like old friends catching up over coffee. But behind the laughter and light-hearted banter, a much darker reality often lurked, one the audience at home never noticed. Many of Carson's most unforgettable guests were quietly fighting devastating battles with addiction, desperate struggles that sometimes unfolded right in front of the cameras. If only viewers had known what to look for. Johnny Carson had an extraordinary instinct for human vulnerability, revealed a former Tonight Show producer who worked with him for over a decade. He could sense when someone was using alcohol or drugs to mask deeper pain. Sometimes he protected them, gently steering the conversation to safer ground. Other times he applied just enough pressure to let the truth briefly surface. Carson was a master at making intoxicated guests look composed, explained a television historian who closely studied the show. If a guest began rambling, he'd jump in with a perfectly timed joke. If the conversation drifted into dangerous territory, he'd seamlessly change the subject. Most viewers had no idea they were watching Carson perform a high-wire rescue in real time. To understand just how skilled Carson was, we need to look at one of the most brilliant and tragic figures ever to sit on his couch. 1. Richard Pryor, comedy's troubled genius. When Richard Pryor stepped onto Johnny Carson's stage, audiences witnessed a force of nature. His rapid-fire delivery, raw honesty, and fearless social commentary didn't just entertain, they changed comedy forever. Pryor wasn't simply funny, a comedy historian explained. He transformed personal pain into universal truth. He forced audiences to confront racism, poverty, and violence, and somehow made them laugh while doing it. What viewers didn't realize was that many of Pryor's most legendary Carson appearances happened while he was battling severe drug addiction, a struggle that would eventually lead to his infamous 1980 incident, when, in a drug-induced psychosis, he doused himself with rum and set himself on fire. Carson could tell immediately when Pryor was using heavily, revealed a longtime Tonight Show staff member. There was a manic edge to his energy, darting eyes, sudden loss of focus mid-sentence. Yet even under the grip of addiction, Pryor's genius remained intact. At times, it even seemed amplified. What makes Pryor's Carson interviews especially heartbreaking is how clearly Carson recognized the demons his guest was fighting. In several mid-1970s appearances, careful viewers can spot moments where Carson gently redirects the conversation, preventing Pryor from spiraling. One 1977 interview is particularly painful to watch today. Pryor is visibly high, his thoughts scattered, his usual precision gone. Carson could have let the moment collapse on live television, but instead, he stepped in. He asked simple, grounding questions, giving Pryor a chance to regain control. It was masterful interviewing driven by genuine compassion. That compassion was even more evident during Pryor's 1980 appearance after his near-fatal incident. While other interviewers chased shocking details, Carson handled the topic with sensitivity, allowing Pryor to speak only as much as he could handle before gently moving on. Carson understood how fragile recovery could be, noted a substance abuse expert. Pushing Pryor too hard could have sent him straight back into addiction. In an era obsessed with ratings, Carson chose humanity over sensationalism. Pryor later acknowledged this himself, writing that Carson was one of the few hosts who never exploited his vulnerabilities. Despite everything, the genius, the protection, the attempts at recovery, addiction haunted Pryor until the end, contributing to his declining health and eventual death in 2005. What audiences saw on Carson's couch was only a fraction of a battle that never truly stopped. 2. Judy Garland, the fragile legend. When Judy Garland appeared on The Tonight Show in the early 1960s, viewers witnessed both the twilight of a legend and Carson's remarkable sensitivity as a host. By then, Garland's struggles with prescription drugs and alcohol were an open secret in Hollywood, though many fans still clung to the image of the bright-eyed Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. Garland's dependency began shockingly early, explained a biographer. As a teenager at MGM, she was given amphetamines to control her weight and endure grueling schedules, then barbiturates to force sleep. By the time she appeared on Carson's show, she had been trapped in that cycle for nearly 30 years. Carson treated Garland differently than most hosts would have. When her speech slurred or her focus drifted, he didn't exploit it. Instead, he adjusted: shorter questions, supportive laughter, subtle body language that redirected attention away from her vulnerability. A 1964 appearance shows this perfectly. Garland is clearly under the influence, yet Carson shields her with grace. He makes her feel safe, respected, human. Privately, Carson reportedly blamed the Hollywood studio system, not Garland herself. He saw her as a victim of an industry that medicated a child for profit and discarded her when the damage became visible. Even as other shows considered Garland too risky for live television, Carson continued to invite her, giving her space to sing and reminding audiences of her extraordinary talent. Her final appearance came just months before her death from an accidental overdose in 1969. Even then, Carson celebrated her legacy, avoided triggering topics, and ensured viewers remembered the legend, not just the struggle. He couldn't save her life, but he protected her dignity when few others would. 3. Dean Martin, the functioning alcoholic. When Dean Martin strolled onto Carson's stage with a drink in hand, audiences saw effortless cool, the charming crooner who never seemed to take life seriously. But that image was carefully crafted. Martin played the lovable drunk so convincingly that even those close to him struggled to separate the act from reality, explained a biographer. Over time, however, the performance and the truth began to blur. By the late 1960s and 1970s, Martin was what experts call a functional alcoholic. He could perform brilliantly while consuming dangerous amounts of alcohol, but the cost was paid privately: isolation, emotional numbness, and declining health. Carson recognized this. In their interviews, there's an unspoken understanding, a knowing smile, a shared silence. Carson never pressed Martin about his drinking, even when Martin joked about it himself. During a 1975 appearance, Martin made an unusually honest remark about needing a drink just to feel normal. Carson didn't exploit it. He let it pass, protecting both the man and the illusion audiences expected. It was a quiet agreement between two men who understood the price of keeping up appearances.